Tiki bird. Tiki bird. What you doing? What you doing? Huh? Come here. Come here. Come here. Bird is making so much noise. Okay. So, I wanted to do this outside, but it was just way too windy out there. So I'm going to do it in here. Look at what he did to my papers. He has to chew on everything. Yes, you little monster. To go chewing on my cool things. It's annoying. Okay. For Frimany's sake, because we have to be smaller. Hopefully this doesn't take an hour and a half. There we go. You! Bird lips! And Donald Trump can't handle a crying baby. Jiminy Christmas. What a privileged life he must have had. Let's crunch that down. Mark the press. With you and the shush. And the shush and you. Together again. Shushing. Oh, I wish I could turn this the way you could see it. Oh well. Whoopee. Whoopee padoopee. With the shushing. He is Lord and Master of my home. Tiki, the king, demands attention. Let me out of my prison. A lot of heat. Alright. Oop. Alright, let's see now if we can shove a crutch in one end. If everything doesn't fall out. Spewing everywhere. Maybe not so much. This is gonna need a little repair work. Tiggy! You are the lippiest of lipped birds. Yes, tweak, squawk. He sounds like a pterodactyl, like from some cartoon. like from the 70s, like Herculoids or something. That's what he sounds like. But Donald Trump can't do a speech with a crying child. I can roll a joint with Mr. Nagy behind me, giving me hassles. But Donald Trump can't give a speech with a crying child. I had to shop, drive a car, and tell a kid no with him crying. Donald Trump just can't cope with it. What is going on here? All right, fine. Fine, fine. The crutch is not going to happen. The crutch is not going to happen. Whatever. Whatever. I don't like when it has this. Why doesn't it stick right there? I know I licked it. Why is it not adhering? Squeeze it down. Adhere. Adhere. There we go. Yeah. Now we can go out and enjoy that. Not the best joint I've ever rolled. Welcome to this edition of Wake and Bake News, and I'm your host, Shampoo VTA, Kelly Davis, and how are you on this Tuesday? I'm out of the house because as you can hear, the boy is upset. He's been a pill since he got up this morning. Mr. T. Alrighty. So, to start off my show, I've made a compilation of some videos, and this is marijuana activists, and I'll leave links, are, living it up basically at the DNC and celebrating. Police officer from Colorado has gone to Indiana to advise them on responsible legalization and the effects of it in Colorado, and not from the Rocky Mountain Drug Task Force that goes around BSing everybody. A really great interview with one of our senators who has been pushing through legalization and giving a comparison between legalization of marijuana and the gay rights movement and the marriage equality movement. And that interview is excellent, and it's actually done by Snoop Dogg's new website, which is Mary Jane, and I have to say the production value is very high. Very, very high level American politician to get a hold of and talk to, so. Then one of the other videos is the one of Snoop Dogg's new television show that he's going to have on MTV called Mary and Jane, which is a sitcom, and part of a huge lineup, apparently, of lead TV shows, some of them attracting A-list stars like John Malkovich. So, interesting there, too. So let's take a look at this video I put together for you for fun.
when all hope is lost and there's no end in sight. Lift up your eyes, heroes will rise.
2001, you introduced one of the first major medical marijuana reform acts to the House floor. How have you seen the movement change since then?
Well, a great deal. Actually, I go back a little further than that. The first bill I introduced was to legalize marijuana completely in 1972 in Massachusetts. I looked very carefully then at any good arguments against it. Haven't found any in 45 years. And this is one case where the politicians are catching up with the public. What happens is, and we did this with same-sex marriage and other things, you have this prejudice against people doing something that they want to do because other people don't want them to do it, even though it has no negative effect on them. And the rule ought to be, if I want to do something and it doesn't bother you, mind your own business.
Lay down your fear, get ready to fight. Heroes will rise, heroes will rise.
Tell you that I have seen people that absolutely benefit from the use of medical cannabis.
A police chief in support of marijuana. It's something you don't often hear, but at a police conference in Indianapolis today, a police chief said just that. As the issue of marijuana for recreational and medical use starts to become a nationwide topic, police here in Indiana are learning from the guinea pigs. Call 6 Investigates' Paris Lou Bell has more on the balance of public safety and marijuana.
This is a very controversial subject.
Police Chief Marco Vasquez is a little out of place. He's not from Indiana, and he's not a woman. But he's spending the day at the National Association of Women Law Enforcement Executives Conference in Indianapolis. Why? To talk about weed.
And what you talk about there is you partner with your community to solve problems of a concern to both the police agency and your community, and that's what we're dealing with marijuana.
Vasquez is from Erie, Colorado, a small town outside of Denver. Before he was chief there, he was in charge of investigations for Colorado's Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division.
Quite frankly, we didn't know what we didn't know when this first started, and even now there's a lot that we don't know, and we're trying to kind of sort our way through what are some of the issues and how we're going to deal with those issues.
In his 4 decades as a cop in Colorado, a state with one of the nation's first medical and recreational marijuana laws, he's been a guinea pig for how police deal with marijuana issues.
We some police officers who disagree with you. They'll say marijuana is bad no matter what.
Absolutely.
What do you tell them?
I absolutely recognize that just putting people in jail for marijuana possession and marijuana use is likely not to solve this problem. A lot of people are going to use marijuana whether it's legal or not legal. Medical marijuana enforcement.
In front of a group of law enforcement execs from across the country, he shared his story of what cops are dealing with in Colorado and what cops across the country and here in Indiana need to look out for as the laws continue to change.
He's talking about an issue that I do expect someday Indiana to be facing, and I don't know if that'll be sooner rather than later.
You read about articles and you think you know what's going on in other states that have legalized marijuana, but to actually have someone here in Indianapolis to tell us what their firsthand experiences is very vital.
Those of us in law enforcement, I think we're curious because for so long, it has been talked about, and now states are legalizing marijuana, and it affects us at every level.
Lay down your fear, get ready to fight. Heroes will rise, heroes will rise.
Good afternoon.
Cool place. We have your weed.
What? They called us. They know we're drug dealers.
When you asked me to help you with this, you said you want to start a real business.
I've invested every penny I have in this business. On my honor, we will be the great entrepreneurs of the East Side, or we will die trying. You live downstairs from weed dealers. Welcome to Los Angeles.
We
cannot sleep with our customers. But he made me muffin afterwards. So this is a sex muffin? We deliver medicine. We deliver love. She is going to steal all of our clients. What are we gonna do?
Have a smoking day.
Say, baby, what's your name? Are you the one, Mary? Are you Jay? I know a few faces and I do got game. Turn it up for me now, like that.
We are not losers.
There were two young ladies that I knew on the block. They did different things, but I mean, they totally rock.
Oh my god, this party is so bomb, it's gonna be strapped to a bus with Keanu Reeves. 90s.
Random sex cures everything. Headaches, Lyme disease. I think I'm just done dating in LA. What if I cry? What if I throw myself at him in desperation? What if I get drunk and take off my top and start a fist fight? I mean, I don't want to invalidate your feelings, but like that last thing would be awesome.
Say, baby, what's your name? Are you the one, Mary? Are you Jay?
Who wants to smoke weed?
Girl, you are singing that song.
We want to have every American citizen above the age of 21 to have the right to grow cannabis in their home.
What we do is we bag pots and pans in the streets. Look today, so much national attention on a 51-foot joint, and the Philadelphia police retweeted our picture of our joint today.
In context of marijuana at the DNC, it's a big deal for us. We're cheering them on. The Democratic Party, hopefully by the end of this week, is going to adopt what they call a pathway to legalization. And we hope that that pathway is rather short.
I hope they deschedule. Rescheduling would be okay. In my mind, it's not enough.
I think it's exciting. I'm a little worried. Locally, we win marijuana reform with bipartisan support. And when you look at polling for Pennsylvania, medical marijuana polls at 90%. And you don't get there without having incredibly strong bipartisan support. So I'm grateful that the Democrats are doing it. I wish the Republicans would do it too, because there are plenty of marijuana smoking conservatives in America that want to pay less money for their weed, okay? And we need them too.
Well, I wrote the first medical marijuana bill in New Jersey probably almost a decade ago, which is now the law. It was signed into law about 7 years ago. Just this last year, we wrote the bill to legalize marijuana in New Jersey. And what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I mean, we have prohibition of alcohol, and all it did was prove that we created a criminal element. We've done the same thing to create an entire generation of lawbreakers as a result of this 100-year failure of the drugs law. So, yeah, I'm happy about that.
That's an interesting comment. A generation of lawbreakers, yeah, people that were able to compartmentalize their lives.
Scheduling and on the legalization of marijuana, you have not all states are in accordance with it, so you have you've got to get probably more unity, within the states.
I personally am for it, especially we've got they want to have a law down in Florida as far as for medicinal purposes. I think as far as using it with that, I am for it. Not just, let's say, open sale, general sale. I'm still not quite for it.
I think it's fine, but it's just a process. So it's a product that should be able to see what we can do with it. And I think it's open to debate to some people, but I think it's something we should move forward with.
I personally think that it should be left up to each state, and I think that eventually it will be probably legalized.
We're taking people from their homes, we're taking children from their schools, and kind of incarcerating them for reasons that are really not endangering many other people. So definitely it would make sense to decriminalize marijuana as much as we can. And I think that will be very strong in cutting down the school to prison pipeline.
I don't think that the platform should reschedule marijuana. I think it should be
That's
descheduled
a
as it
pin
has been in Colorado.
Colorado has gone through it. Other states have gone through it. So
That's
I
a
think
pin collection,
they're
man.
waiting maybe for the logical to happen. As for California, we attempted it last time.
I just
We're
love
up for it again. I think we'll do it this time in California.
It's a hot look. My next piece here, is MJ Biz Daily on the campaign trail Q&A with Congressman Earl Blumenauer, right. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the one I showed you some of the video of. That was, oh, no. This is a different congressman. I apologize. This is Earl Blumenauer. Duh. Being an idiot right now. Okay, so I'm going to read some of this about a Q&A with Congressman Earl Blumenauer and tell you about the advancements of legalization with the Democratic Party. On the campaign trail. Sorry, mic fell over. On the campaign trail, Q&A with Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Marijuana Business Daily, by John Schroyer. Earl Blumenauer is an Oregon congressman, yet he's traveled to places such as Maine to help pass marijuana legalization initiatives in several states this fall. Blumenauer, a longtime marijuana advocate, recently took time to discuss national cannabis policies with Marijuana Business Daily. Voters in nearly a dozen states may be voting in November on whether to legalize recreational or medical marijuana. The results could have enormous implications for the marijuana industry at both the state and national level. Blumenauer, a Democrat from a state where recreational and medical marijuana are legal, is going out of his way to help sway the upcoming election. Last month, for example, he appeared in Las Vegas on behalf of the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol. The group spearheaded a Nevada ballot measure to legalize recreational cannabis. Looking ahead to the fall, Blumenauer is for the most part bullish on the prospect for legalization. Why the campaign stop in Nevada? The Nevada campaign is an interesting one. It's a very pivotal state, and it's going to get a lot of attention this year because half of the state's congressional delegation is involved in competitive races. There's also a competitive U.S. Senate race, and it's a swing state presidentially. Also, some 50 million people come to Nevada every year. About 4 million a month go through Las Vegas. So if recreational cannabis wins in Nevada, it's going to have a very profound impact. People from all over the country would be exposed to legal adult use marijuana. What else are you doing on behalf of legalization? I'm planning on helping each of the state campaigns. I've already been meeting with people in California and in Maine. I'm going to be in Massachusetts. The Florida campaign is medical, but it's huge. If it's successful, it'll be the second largest marijuana market in the country after California. I'm also planning on doing some work in Arizona. Up to 11 states across the country could be voting on legalization ballot measures for either recreational or medical. Care to offer any predictions? I'm quite optimistic. I don't want to give away any campaign secrets, but based on work that I've done and the research I've reviewed, these campaigns at this point are ahead in every single state. But that's not guaranteed. That's where we're going to end up. Donald Trump could be the next president. But if California, and I think it's going to pass overwhelmingly, I think we get MMJ in Florida. It got 58% in a non-presidential election in 2014. And this year, based on the surveys that I've heard of and seen, it's in the 70s. I think it's very strong in Maine. I suspect the medical marijuana initiative in Missouri is pretty good bet. If there's only one ballot measure in Arkansas, I think that passes. All the other state campaigns are in a safety zone. They can pass if the people who care about it are willing to step up. If they're willing to donate, if they're willing to campaign, and if they're willing to pin down elected officials, Massachusetts is going to be harder than people think. Unfortunately, there's a Republican governor and some Democratic politicians who are against it, but there's public support, and it's doable. Nevada is a horse race, but it could pass there and in Arizona. What kind of ramifications will there be in Washington, D.C. if there are a number of cannabis victories across the country in November? really helps us. The ballot measures have forced a number of people to look at it. Maybe they were people who didn't philosophically support it. But for us to be able to show them marijuana is more popular in their district than you are, that makes a difference. And we've worked very hard to make sure this not be a partisan issue. I think we're going to have an administration that's going to continue to be supportive and does not get in the way. I think they're most likely going to have Democratic control of the Senate. I think the stage is set to get across the finish line in the next Congress. I think we fix banking. I think we fix the unfair taxation, and I think we fix the research prohibition. Excuse me. You sound very optimistic. I think in 5 years, this game is over. Medical marijuana will be available to people in every state, and most states will be treating marijuana like they treat alcohol. The train has left the station. If we all do our jobs this year, okay, so if the train has left the station, if we all do our jobs this year, yeah, we're all on this train. Yep. It's the, the choo-choo, the soul train. Okay. Next is normal.com, a pathway towards marijuana legalization, the significance of the Democratic platform. More about what's going on with the Democrats. A pathway towards marijuana legalization, the significance of the Democratic platform, normal.org. Among all the speeches and balloons and revelry of the recently completed Democratic National Convention, a convention that has already made history by nominating a woman for president, was far less obvious but important change in the Democratic platform. For the first time since marijuana was made illegal on the federal level in 1937, a major party platform has embraced a strategy they describe as a reasoned pathway for future legalization. Let's see. That's right. While many mainstream elected officials remain skittish of endorsing or embracing potential controversial social issues, the 2016 Democratic Party finally could no longer ignore the changing attitudes towards marijuana legalization reflected in the national polls and the evidenced by the growing number of states that have already moved in this direction. The precise text of the history-making marijuana amendment was as follows: because the conflicting laws concerning marijuana, both on federal and state level, we encourage the federal government to remove marijuana from its list of Class 1 federal controlled substances, providing a reasonable pathway for future legalization. In other words, the Democrats endorsed the strategy legalizers have been following since 2012, when we first legalized marijuana in Colorado and Washington, despite the continuation of federal prohibition. Now, let's be honest. We have all seen over the years that the national parties tend to adopt a platform favored by their candidates, which is then almost immediately ignored once the candidate is elected. The platform is a campaign tool, and it is malleable so as not to box anyone into a position he or she is uncomfortable with. Nonetheless, seeing the words "a reasoned pathway for future legalization" in the Democratic platform is truly empowering for those who have worked so long to try to get our state and nationally elected officials to embrace an end to marijuana prohibition. It provides political cover to any and all elected officials who have known all along that prohibition causes more harm than the marijuana it is intended to protect us from, but who have feared an honest position might endanger their political careers. Bernie Sanders factor. We recognize that Bernie Sanders has the strongest pro-legalization position, and that his publicizing that position during the hard-fought campaign and fighting for those provisions during the platform debates caused Secretary Hillary Clinton and her supporters to move to the left. First, endorsing the medical use of marijuana, and most importantly, agreeing with Sanders that the states should be allowed to continue to experiment with full legalization without interference from the federal government. That is a significant improvement over her earlier cautious statements calling for more research, and should assure us at least 4 more years to demonstrate to the public that legalization is an effective program with few, if any, unintended consequences. Thanks, Bernie. We are in your debt. Incremental change. With social issues, occasionally progress comes in bold steps, especially if the courts get involved and determine that an existing policy is unconstitutional, e.g. Roe versus Wade on abortion rights, or Obergefell versus Hodges on gay marriage, something like that. Of course, each of these victories was preceded by decades of litigation, so they too were not exactly overnight successes. Change takes time in this country, and generally occurs in incremental steps, rather than by big steps. But the courts have consistently refused to hold marijuana prohibition inconstitutional, with the exception of the state's decision out of Alaska back in 1975, Raven versus the state. Holding the marijuana laws were unconstitutional as applied to persons' use amount in the home. So we don't have the luxury of designing a strategy to win this fight with one big successful court decision. We will have to win litigation through a combination of voter initiatives in the states that offer that opposition, and passing legislation in the other states, a challenging task that almost assures those states will be amongst the last to change. But prohibition has been in effect for 80 years, resulting in the arrest of more than 30 million Americans on marijuana charges, many serving time in prison, alienating generations of young people, and severely limiting their ability to get an education and advance professionally in their chosen careers. If necessary, we can certainly spend a few more decades, and I believe it will require a decade or more to finally treat responsibly marijuana smokers fairly, including ending job discrimination, unfair child care policies, and unfair DUID provisions to repair the damage caused by prohibition. For the first time in my lifetime, a major political party has suggested they too recognize the need to move towards legalization and away from prohibition. It was certainly not the headline of a convention that nominated the first female candidate for president, but it surely was a wonderfully hopeful sign of things to come. But the next quadrillion conventions, even the Republicans may have found the courage to state the obvious. Maybe in the next quadrillion conventions. Okay, and my last story is Think Progress. Under pressure from protesters, mainly Black Lives Matters apparently, NYPD Police Chief Bill Bratton resigns today. He was going to retire in a year, but under pressure he's left today. And this is a big win for Black Lives Matters, apparently. So this is a big win for BLM and Mary Jane reform, marijuana reform, because he was also, even though he put in some progressive laws in New York about stop and frisk and stuff, he was still that dude that was all about the broken windows, which is the idea is that you go after low-level crimes like selling cigarettes, I guess, on the sidewalk and then kill the man, you know, or marijuana use or something. And this is the idea is that this will prevent bigger crime. When in fact all it did was artificially pump up arrest numbers to make it look like they were doing a lot more than they actually were, when they were just basically, you know, pick up a guy on the side of the street and bust him for a low-level crime, and it looks like, you know, I'm making all these amazing things happen in New York. So big win right there. Think Progress, Justice.org. Under pressure from protesters, New York PD chief resigns. New York Police Commissioner Bill Bratton is resigning suddenly under pressure from protesters. The announcement Tuesday marks the end of Bratton's second stint atop the New York PD. He will stay on into September to aid his successor, James O'Neill, the Wall Street Journal reports. Bratton had already planned to retire by the end of next year, but he had previously insisted he would not step down until the department was reorganized to his satisfaction. His abrupt resignation Tuesday gives a win to Black Lives Matter protesters who had amassed in a park across from City Hall and defied police to evict them. The shut-down City Hall, New York City, protest marks 3 demands, with Bratton's scalp the first, the other 2 a full defunding of the New York PD and reparation payments from the city to the families of people of color brutalized by police are tougher sells. Bratton is a complicated figure, simultaneously responsible for ushering in and defending a quota-driven policing strategy that breeds oppressive and aggressive practices, and for offering a rare public acknowledgement of the racist history of American policing. Bratton called out that history in clear language in 2015 speech at a black church in Queens. Slavery, our country's original sin, sat on a foundation codified by law enforcement, by police, by slave catchers, Bratton said, noting that the Dutch explorers who established New York made slave-catching cops his first priority. Since then, the stories of police and black citizens have intertwined again and again. The unequal nature of the relationship cannot and must not be denied. The birth of the broken windows policy. Bratton, latter-day honesty about police racism is about as far away from Rudy Giuliani's race-baiting convention speech and television appearances as white establishment figures in law enforcement can get. But Bratton made his reputation by serving as Giuliani's right-hand man in instituting so-called broken windows laws, enforcement policies that fueled mass incarcerations and kept a New York PD boot on the neck of the city's black community. His signature contribution to the policing business, now adopted almost everywhere in America, is the data system that allows municipality leaders to distance themselves from allegations of racism by cloaking police actions in quantitative language. CompStat, made infamous among civilians by HBO's The Wire, has Bratton's way of condensing the complex human work of law enforcement into measurable, discrete figures. The system signals to commanders that numbers matter as much or more than practical community relationships. That helps promote ideas like arrests, quotas and stop and frisk policies and encourages police to fudge the numbers to make their bosses happy. In other words, they use stop and frisk to see if you have a little pocket full of marijuana, and then they say that you resisted arrest and they beat the shit out of you and possibly shoot you, but you're certainly going to get the shit beat out of you and arrested. And then they use these numbers to say that they're doing all these wonderful things for the city, when in fact they're not. They're just brutalizing a group of people that everybody turns away from, and then they use those arrest numbers to say, hey, look, I'm such a good police officer, when no, in fact, you're ignoring most of the major crime, and you're just going around and harassing people to drive numbers up. Marijuana enforcement is a very integrated part of all of this. Should be the major reason why everyone considers legalization. And whenever you hear a police officer talking about why legalization should not happen, remember this broken windows policy. What they're using marijuana prohibition for. It isn't to protect your children. It's to abuse poor people of color, to abuse their rights. They don't want that to be taken away. Together with then Mayor Giuliani, vehemence about cleaning up the city, Bratton's numbers-driven focus on so-called lifestyle offenses effectively made the NYPD an occupying force in the city's poorest pockets. Officers were directed to aggressively patrol and make arrests for the most minor offenses, marijuana in your pocket. The area bred policies that the department is struggling to shake to this day, such as stairwell patrols that led Officer Peter Lang to shoot and kill Akia Gurley last year, cleaning up his mess. Nonetheless, Bratton's return to the New York under Mayor Bill de Blasio was initially hailed as a potential breath of fresh air for the city's long-suffering minority population. Bratton's predecessor, Ray Kelly, played the same role for then-Mayor Michael Bloomberg as Bratton had for Giuliani, as the guy who got his hands dirty to make white New Yorkers feel safe at the expense of everyone else. It seemed possible that Bratton, under de Blasio, would serve to reform the New York PD. But those reform efforts have been uneven at best, even as scandals exploded. Both individual corruption and systematic quota-driven abuses. Bratton ensured that bad cops were reinstated before they resigned, so their paths out of the department would be smoother. In public statements that sounded like time capsules from decades before, he blamed marijuana for crime and rappers for real-world violence. And the choking death of Eric Garner at the hands of officers, Daniel Pentello in July 2014 illustrated just how deeply rooted the idea Bratton promoted in his first stint atop the department have become. Garner's ostensible crime, selling loose cigarettes on the street, is exactly the sort of thing Giuliani and Bratton targeted in their 1990 crackdowns. Bratton acknowledged at the time that the chokehold Pentello used to kill Garner is now banned by the department handbook, but the department never charged him. And the physical violence and escalation-oriented interactions that Garner's killers demonstrated are straight out of the playbook Bratton helped Giuliani to write. Today it's a good day. Kiss that motherfucker goodbye. I wasn't too sure about this battery, so I had to kind of race through this one. That's why the joint lasted so long. It's nice to sit in your own yard in California and smoke the marijuana that you grow in your own nice. That's nice. It's not great, but it tastes like freedom. It'll get better. Alrighty, so you stay high and goodbye, and we'll keep an eye out for more significant stories out there. There's a lot of different counties in California that have been preparing for legalization and, you know, regulating and getting taxes ready. Fillmore is like pissing everybody in Ventura County off, which is typical because they're such idiots. You know, they just dig a hole deeper and deeper for themselves, and now they're asking us to okay, you know, a sales tax raise in order to pay for stuff in the city, and yet they deny dispensaries, which could bring in enormous taxes to the city. So I can't help them. If they're that stupid, I can't help them. Watching the bees go crazy in the neighbor's house. There's a bunch of bees. You know what I noticed about the bees before I let you go here? If you leave your porch light on all night, you kill off at least a good dozen bees that get confused thinking that's the sun and they're supposed to go towards it. So outside of both of our doorways here for the neighbors and our house, I found a bunch of dead bees on the ground because they're stupid enough to they see that light and they just you know, if I have to cover my bathroom window this time of year because they're stupid, they try to go right in the window when you go to the toilet in the middle of the night because they think that's the sun coming up on the horizon, and then you're buzzing around your freaking bathroom. Alright, so you stay high and goodbye, and I'll see you tomorrow hopefully with more interesting political news and things that are happening. And I'll leave you with this little clip from Donald Trump about what a great parent he would be to the entire country. Don't cry, or he may make you sit out in the hall.
World, a Chinese bank. Don't worry about that baby. I love babies, though. I love babies. I hear that baby crying. I like it. What a baby. What a beautiful baby. Don't worry. Don't worry. The mom's running around like, don't worry about it, you know. It's young and beautiful and healthy, and that's what we want. Okay. Actually, I was only kidding. You can get the baby out of here. That's all right. Don't worry. I think she really believed me that I love having a baby crying while I'm speaking.
once again, man. Fucking good. Once again, man.